Hey friends, thanks for downloading this week's Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. Okay, before we start this awesome episode, I want to say you are the reason we do these shows. I've said it before and I'll say it again. On behalf of Brad and really all of the guests and the co-hosts, we love teaming up with other folks because we all have something to say when it comes to nerd stuff, right? And whether you interact with us on Twitter or our other social media or join us live on Saturdays, I say thank you. This week's episode continues in the tradition. For those of you who have been with us from the beginning, you'll remember that our first mega crossover show was our discussion about the legacy of Leia with Andrew and Marisha, of course, on Radio Underground. And at the time, it seemed that not a lot of podcasters were teaming up to do new content, so we wanted to change that landscape. Why create a podcast and not interact with other people, right? Okay, and that's exactly what we did, and we continue to do so, forming our idea to start the Red 5 Network with other shows. This week, we kind of go back to our roots in many ways. You're about to hear our collaboration with yet another podcast, From a Certain Point Askew. And we're diving into the Battle of Scarif. Sounds like home, right? This two-part episode starts right here at the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast and continues on their show next week. I encourage you, if you are not subscribed to them, go find them, follow, and subscribe to the show. Listen to From a Certain Point Askew beyond just our second part of this episode. You won't be sorry. All right, December is coming up soon, right around the corner, and I wanted to give you guys a heads up. We're trying to reach a milestone. Our road to 45K lifetime listens is kind of a big deal to Brad and I. It means that you guys are really enjoying what we put out there, and that's music to our ears. We want to be able to continue to pop out quality shows and provide you all with great discussions without all the fan dueling. Remember, we're here to laugh with you, not at you, as they say. If you have a chance, please head on over to wherever you download your other shows and give us a review. The algorithm likes it, and so do we. Okay, guys and gals, it's time for the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, part 1 of 2, at the Battle of Scarif.
This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.
Approaching shield control, transmitting code clearance on ISB channel 4. This is Scarif Substation. Proceed to landing platform for further instructions from Scarif Control.
Scarif Control, this is TK226. Come in, Scarif Control.
This is Scarif Station. Stand by.
Yeah, we see heavy fire down below. Is the garrison deployed?
We've had insurgents breach the shield. What's your status, TK226?
Control just cleared the gate.
Stand by to receive new orders.
Scarif Control.
We'll coordinate an attack north of the Visage Ridge and send in the walkers.
TK226, this is Commander Milan. Proceed to the North Ridge and engage the rebels there. We've got them on the run, but we need your support. Repeat, we need your support!
Excellent. Gentlemen, ladies, aliens, multi-lobed beings, whoever is listening to the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, thank you very much for joining us on this week's edition of the Scuttlebutt. We've got an awesome show, and it's a good one. You guys are going to be doubly pleased, but backstage, I've got some folks that I'm going to bring out. But first of all, I just want to mention again, if you are finding us for the first time here at the Scarif podcast, thank you so much for trying this episode. You will not be disappointed. If you have listened to us before, you've already been disappointed, so don't worry about it. Just keep listening. But thank you. Big thanks to everybody who's joining us on tonight's episode of the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. I have From a Certain Point Askew, the guys from that podcast here. This is going to be kind of cool. We're doing a double show, and we'll explain it to you. But as you guys know, and I posted this a couple of days ago, the name of the Scarif podcast came from Rogue One. If you didn't put two and two together. We are, yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, let's bring the guys out. Matt J from A Certain Point Askew. Thank you guys for joining us.
We appreciate. There's the applause. You get that?
I've been here forever.
Lurking.
I appreciate you getting the name right because a lot of people mess that one up. So thank you very much for having us on.
I can read.
Yeah, exactly. You get the stickers. You have the stickers to prove it.
I think even Matt has pointed out a couple of times that I've gotten it wrong when I used the show when we first started.
That's keeping on brand for you, Jay.
Yeah, it is.
That's perfect. That's perfect. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
Very well. Yeah.
Excellent.
Excited to be on. We've had you on our show. We did the Ahsoka preview, and and you've been trying to get us on your show, so it's great to finally be here.
Yeah, fantastic. I love having folks on. It's wonderful. I was telling Matt before we hit the record button, it's wonderful to kind of team up with other podcasters, other content creators. I think it gives us an energy that is different than if it's just, solo podcasts or, your usual co-host. I think it really energizes I guess the landscape, of podcasting. But it's wonderful. We've been at it for, since 2019 and really had such, we're having an amazing time here at the Scarif podcast. I've had plenty of regular co-hosts and some wonderful, wonderful guests, and I'm very honored to count you among those. So thank you.
2019. Can you imagine, Matt, if you started the show in 2019?
So did you not podcast before that, Ro? That was your first jump into it?
Actually, I had a podcast just about collecting back in 2018. And it was just myself. And for some reason, why did I leave that one?
You stopped collecting.
What was that?
I said you stopped collecting.
I didn't stop collecting.
Look behind him.
I know. Look behind me. Exactly.
Yeah, you couldn't fill the room anymore. You had to have.
You hit your saturation point at some point.
True.
Yeah. But it's funny. I was talking to my my original co-host on this show, and we were on Twitter, we were online, and we discovered that we had a love for JFK and conspiracies and Lee Harvey Oswald and all that stuff. So we were talking back and forth, and he had done some research, and I own a video production company, and I wanted to do a documentary with him as the subject, as the expert. And then we just got to talking, and then that kind of morphed. I don't know how JFK morphed into Star Wars, but we started Star Wars. I mean, when you're a Star Wars nerd, everything morphs into Star Wars, doesn't it?
Well, that is a little crazy because I used to play what was it, 6 or 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yes.
But back in the day, I used to play with my friends. They get so mad because JFK was like one of you could link anybody through the movie JFK because there were so many people in it.
Yeah.
So now I'm wondering, how did you get from JFK to Star Wars? I'm trying to think if there's anybody in JFK that was in the Star Wars movies. I don't think there was.
Are you sure?
Oliver Stone directed. No, I'm just kidding.
That's a good question. I can't think of one.
Good question. And I don't know how I did it. I mean, I can talk to my wife about mortgage payments, and then all of a sudden it'll pivot to Star Wars. So that's just a talent we all have, I think.
Yeah, but that's the trick, right? You found out what you needed to podcast about, and this keeps going. And to go back, like you said, 2019, I started 2008, and Matt, you started shortly after I did, right?
I'm a little bit later than you. I think I was 14.
You were 14 years old.
Yeah, I was 14 years old. Got my permit the next year, and things took off.
Talking to yourself in your bedroom.
Look behind me.
No, you're listening. Yoda.
No, I started in 14. I had looked into doing one for years, like probably 4 years off and on, talked to different friends about it. It never came to fruition. Then it was the beginning of 14 when it started, but you started in 08. That is early days, sir.
Such a bug, man. And once it gets you, it just does. And like when I first started podcasting, I was just like part of a group. And then it was when I started hosting, the host that we had kind of had gone away, mental problems. You can listen to the TLPS. It's fun stuff. But then I got that little bug. And after he came back, he wanted to, and then we started arguing about, and I was like, I love doing this. And then from there, it just, I don't know how many shows, I bet you there's probably over 10 podcasts that I've created myself. So I love it.
Did you not get like a podcasting for dummies book or something, or like the podcasting starter set microphone?
I started listening to Kevin Smith when he started doing Smodcasts. It was either episode 1 or 2 existed. And after a few episodes, I was like, this is something I would like to do. So I went to the library and got Podcasting for Dummies and the Idiot's Guide to Podcasting. Wow. And read them both, like one night and then the other night. And I was ready to go after that, and that was still like when you had to sort of like get on the internet and really figure shit out, even though after reading those 2 books. But and then it's just been going on and on ever since.
Could you imagine what's in those books, Ro? I mean, is it still worthwhile today, those books?
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
Is there probably a kernels? The stuff is still pretty similar. RSS feed, setting things up. A lot of the Libsyn still exists, and that's what was recommended in those books. So there's not. You know what? This is probably not the place to have that conversation. But
podcasting 101 would be the show.
Shocker! I do that show too. It's coming back, 2024.
No, but it's wonderful. I mean, I always talk, obviously my Red 5 crew talk about technology and the facilitation of what did they call it back in the late 80s? It was the democratization of media. But we all have a microphone and a camera in front of our face, and all of a sudden we are content creators. Ooh, ah. That's right. Everybody should have a podcast. Everybody should have a podcast. So. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. But so JFK to Star Wars, and we realized that not only did we love JFK and Star Wars, our birthdays are a day apart. So it was really, really freaky. It's
like the Lincoln and the Kennedy stuff that lines up together with the secretaries and the
That's right.
Yeah, and the dates, But so we started that podcast, and obviously, in 2019 we had Star Wars Celebration here in Chicago. And I just grabbed some gear and went to McCormick Place and went to town, talked to people, and our first episode was dropped soon after. So living the dream, one soundbite at a time, as they say in the news business.
Very good.
You know what's funny is I don't even know what year did we start this podcast.
I think 2020.
Was it pandemic year?
I think it was. I think it was the summer of 2020.
Because it runs in because we did the Podtoberfest a couple years where we would do episodes of Star Wars. So it's hard for me to like frame the actual show and what came before it.
I think the actual show started August of 2020, if I'm remembering correctly. So but before that, we did do some kind of one-off stuff, and then we talked for months about why don't we just do a whole show? Right. Nobody else is out there talking about Star Wars and podcasts. So let's just do it.
Yeah. Apparently, Scuttlebutt was before us, and that was it.
We should have known.
Yeah, that's too funny. I think, I'm not one of those guys that is afraid of those numbers. Like if I were, I mean, how many Star Wars podcasts were going on in 2019? What, 63,418, I think, somewhere there.
Yeah. The funny thing is or actually, I guess it's the great thing is there's a lot of the podcast listeners that listen to Star Wars podcasts, listen to multiple shows. Yeah. So that's great that they you really can't feed them enough. So it's like a podcaster. It's like, we didn't even think about it. Like we knew there was a ton of Star Wars podcasts, but we were like, well, we like talking about this, and there were similars. And we also I think we have we go off on, different tangents. I haven't listened to all 63,000 shows, so I don't know how well we compare to the others.
Step it up, Jay.
Yeah, I think
make some time.
You bring a little something different.
I was going to say, if you talk to Rural Farm Boy, he could tell you about every single one of them.
That's true, but he would not have a problem with any of them.
No, very positive. And speaking of that positivity, as much as Twitter, especially Star Wars Twitter, can be just an absolute hellscape of opinions and people shitting on each other constantly and all that stuff, I feel like for the most part, the Star Wars podcast community is pretty supportive of each other. It doesn't feel like I never get the idea that people are being extremely competitive. It's more about what you're saying, Ro, is let's come on each other's shows and, share ideas and get different exposures to different audiences. And that's what I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons I, started the Red 5 network with a slew of wonderful content creators. And we're just, we're happy to be on each other's shows and support what the other is doing. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, none of us are going to quit our day jobs because of this, but it's just a lot of fun. Exactly.
Not yet. Yeah. Right.
So real fast, what do you guys, anything out there in the I guess in the media sphere, that you guys are looking forward to? Any new projects? I know, we are tail end of the Ahsoka series. There's no new Star Wars on the horizon. We got Loki, which is new from the MCU, but is there anything coming up that you guys are looking forward to?
Like, I'm an unabashed geek. Like, I look forward to all of it. It gets pointed out to me regularly that I really hate things. So even the Marvels, like the new trailer that dropped from the Marvels, kind of has me excited. I accidentally came across the end credit sequence today. So there's something cool that's going to be attached to that kind of adds on. I'm not going to do spoilers, but you can find it really easily it's just on Twitter. But Rebel Moon, I was showing my son the trailer to Rebel Moon. I know the new trailer's coming out. Was it Sunday in the NFL football game, right? I think they're doing it Sunday night, or maybe it was the Thursday night game. Maybe it's tomorrow. Regardless, like, I know there's a new trailer coming out, but watching that again, like, that excites me, knowing that was like an origin. It started as a Star Wars story, and then Kennedy or whoever was just like, no, whatever. So Snyder held on to it and made it his own. And I'm curious to know what it would have looked like as a Star Wars film. You can see like the kernels, but the way that he films things is way adult, way above, I don't see the way that he's done things to fit into the Star Wars, like the way that he films things. So this is really his own thing, regardless of where it started off yet. But it almost looks like Star Wars has grown up, kind of, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Limited theatrical release in December, and then I think the second part in February. I think somewhere in there.
No, was it December 22nd? In April somewhere. Let's go mid-April. I think it is both parts. Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to it. I think, as a Star Wars fan, obviously we look forward to the big tentpole events. Really looking forward to something Star Wars back on the big screen. I really miss Star Wars on the big screen.
Yeah, same.
But when it comes to science fiction in general, or science fantasy, as we all know that Star Wars is a little less fiction and less and more fantasy. But Rebel Moon is for me, I think, is going to kind of scratch that itch for new science fiction, new stories. Something that isn't settled in a galaxy far, far away. I watched the new, and I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about it at some point. I watched the new Gareth Edwards film, The Creator.
It looks good.
It was fantastic. Again, I think I would really love to pepper a little bit of that conversation into this conversation as a whole later on. But The Creator, Gareth Edwards, now that I have seen, him kind of really take the reins on The Creator, and then obviously from what we know of Rogue One, I really would love for Edwards to come back to the Star Wars world, because what he did with The Creator was pretty fantastic. From a behind the scenes aspect, The Creator for me is like jaw dropping. The film was shot kind of on a shoestring budget, especially when it comes to a science fiction film.
With a very affordable camera, like a $4,000 camera or something.
Right, a Sony FX3, which you can just anybody can order one. But I think that aspect of creating this world in a make believe universe, it kind of, I think, should appeal, or at least should lift eyebrows to Lucasfilm. I know, with the advent of the what do you call it? The volume technology. You know, they've been using a lot of that because obviously, you know, ILM pioneered that along with Stagecraft. And they've been using the hell out of it since The Mandalorian, and it's great. I understand the need for such a technology. It saves a lot of money. The workflow is a little different because they have to do the special effects first and then shoot. Right. Where on green screen it's the other way around. So there's
even with the creator, there was no green screen, right?
Well, they just went out, they shot, and they added stuff in later.
It's like a whole different, like that's never been done before. That's pretty great. Although I'm curious, like, was it Monsters? Didn't he shoot that on like a $10,000 budget, and that was all he shot live action and added the special effects himself?
Yeah.
And that's essentially what got him the job for Rogue One. And then he does Rogue One, and he doesn't do another one until this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's a big gap.
It is a big gap, but I think,
the Terrence Malick of science fiction.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. But, science fiction films are difficult to produce and to develop. They're not like romantic comedies. Yeah. There's a lot of people that will compare, new stuff to the old stuff. And there's a lot of people that are set in their ways when it comes to science fiction. If you're too derivative, they call you out on being a copycat. Mm-hmm. If you're too original, they call you out for taking a risk. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation a lot of times, especially on Twitter with fans. So, but like I said, if you have not seen the creator, make it a point to find it at your local theater and hopefully watch it on IMAX, but definitely get out there and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You've not seen it yet, Jay?
I haven't. No, it's on my list. I barely have time to sit at this table, which is the one thing I love to do in the world. But yeah, you know me, I love movies, but I haven't had a chance to see it. But I do want to try and see it before it leaves the theater.
Yeah, same. I did not get a chance. There were several movies I missed. Like I wanted to see Oppenheimer in theater, didn't get to see it. I wanted to see the Mission Impossible in the theater, didn't see it. I just missed a bunch of stuff. Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah, I'm always a proponent of going out and sitting in that dark theater, grabbing your popcorn and getting the energy from the other people around you.
Yeah, and even like I had a tendency. What was that? I guess it was a few years ago now. But I went to a number of movies by myself at night. Like my kids were young. Yeah. And I didn't want to mess with them. So I'd just be like, everybody's going to be going to bed soon anyway. And I'd go to a late showing of a movie and it was fucking great. Pardon me. It was great.
Yeah. I don't know why people are afraid to go to a movie theater by themselves. Are people think they're going to be judged or what?
You're not talking.
That's it. That's the weird thing. Right. But like once I did it once, I was like, oh, this is like, go grab your drink or whatever you're going to do, your popcorn, sit in the seat and just enjoy the movie. Because once the lights are out, who gives a shit how many people you're with?
Just because I've got my overcoat on and you can never see my hands, what's the big deal?
What's the big deal?
Exactly. It's not that kind of movie, Matt.
All right, folks, I wanted to take a little break and say thank you to all the patrons here at the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. You all remind me to make sure that we spit out some good product here from topics to technical. We want to make sure that you are proud of us enough to attach your name to this show. First of all, our executor tier, Scott and Kim of the Use and Abuse podcast, a proud member of the Red 5 family. And make sure to check them out. Visit them in the chat when they go live for fun and shenanigans. And speaking of shenanigans, another wonderful supporter, Nicholas Schaefer, Mr. Backyard TARDIS himself. Hey, he's got a channel, Adventures in Locksmithing, and if you think rekeying is all he does, well, you should watch a few of his videos and prepare yourself for the crazies. All right, and moving on to our Garrison tier, big thanks to the Frank, our resident Back to the Future expert. Log in and say hello. What's up, Frank? Melanie Marquita, big high five to you, my friend. One of my favorite collaborators. We got Comics and Cosmetics. Danny, her YouTube channel's got the latest nerd news and some awesome tips on comics and cosmetics. Go give her a sub. All right, big shout outs to Alex, the salty nerd himself. Nicole, peace, love, and all fandoms. And someone who brings joy to my timeline, Belinda. So glad you're on this list. I also want to give a special shout out to Vader Rapina and Rennie. And of course, Ollie and family. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you, patrons and friends of the podcast. If you're interested in helping to keep the lights on here, get some exclusive Scarif swag, stickers, and my periodic Row Rant episodes, head on over to patreon.com/Scarif Scuttlebutt. Remember, we can't have the scuttle without the butt.
So, you want to get into Scarif?
Yeah.
Get into Rogue One?
Let's dive right into our main topic, everybody. So again, this is going to be a double episode. And Matt, why don't you explain to the folks what do I mean by a double episode?
So we're gonna go through kind of not a straight review, like we don't necessarily need to go blow by blow and scene by scene, but we're gonna break down the Battle of Scarif. And the point was to do it where we do the first part. So we're going to, talk for a certain amount of time, get through a bunch of the story beats and all that kind of stuff and our thoughts on them, different characters. And then at some point we'll say, okay. And if you want to continue listening to this conversation, we're going to kick it over to our podcast and we'll pick up with part 2 there. Jay's got a lovely little, what would you call that, Jay? Little intro fun text to get us into our part of the episode. So if you enjoy this conversation, and we hope you do, then you should go check out our show From a Certain Point Askew to see part 2. It'll be episode 127.
Excellent. Yeah. So we're going to do that. This is what we like to call a super mega podcast Duplo episode.
We are cross-pollinating right now.
Absolutely. But yeah, these are a lot of fun, and it gets us some new listeners, maybe folks that aren't usually listening to the Scarif podcast or From a Certain Point Askew. So this will be a lot of fun. So Rogue One, a fantastic movie from my point of view. And I think a lot of people agree, but I just posted earlier today that I don't think there exists in Star Wars lore a more definitively exciting battle in both space and on land there on Scarif. And, Rogue One obviously has many advantages when it comes to or many really great elements when it comes to being a Star Wars movie. The first spin-off in the series of anthology movies that they were going to produce. I really hope they do more. Honestly, Solo was the second one, and we all know how that went, but Solo is another movie that I really enjoyed on the big screen.
It wasn't that movie's fault.
No, I guess it wasn't, but I know a lot of people that when it was streamed on Disney Plus, they really enjoyed it and they regretted not going out to the movie theater. So Rogue One. Getting back to Rogue One, fantastic film, wonderful elements. Again, there's a lot of story points in that movie that really. A lot of people say that they watched Rogue One and then A New Hope right afterwards, and they kind of clump the two movies together. And I would highly recommend, always doing that from now on, because it's we people talk about what is it, the machete order in watching Star Wars, but Rogue One should definitely be cut butt right up to A New Hope.
Literally handle it just like you're going to handle our 2 episodes of this.
Exactly.
Just one right into the other one.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Exactly.
Well, I think Rogue One for me, I love Rogue One. It ranks way up there. I typically try not to rank Star Wars films, but let's just say it's toward the top.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was the fact that it felt like the closest thing to the original trilogy, but also with a bit more edge to it.
Yes.
And so that's what I really liked about it. I mean, as much as Force Awakens, when it first opened, that first scene, I was like, oh, we're back to Star Wars. That's how I felt when I first got there.
Sure.
And as much as it tried to kind of duplicate a lot of things in A New Hope, I still feel like Rogue One felt more like a George Lucas style original trilogy film to me.
I think it was the sideburns that did it.
Could be.
Yeah, they kept like that 70s kind of feel to it, which is, I mean, they blended like the look, right? But they updated it with like a better pacing for like modern audiences, technology, everything. But it's almost seamless. It's kind of crazy. And watching it today, I've only watched it maybe 4 or 5 times because I don't know about you guys, but like as an adult, when you're a kid, you just watch, like, I think that's why we're like obsessed with Star Wars so much. We could just watch it over and over again. Mm-hmm. And as an adult, I rarely get to see a movie more than once because there's so much to take in. I love this stuff. So I don't ever really go back much, but sitting and watching it again, I was like, man, I mean, this to me is, I would like to do like, even if it was the 7 Days a Geek, more so than like just FactPub, but like the greatest prequels. This has to stand up as like the greatest prequel ever made. Because it stands up as its own film. It is amazing. It grabs you by the balls. That Battle of Scarif is amazing, right? Knowing the stuff that went into the third act and how they had to reshoot things and kind of like blend things together. Yes. But man, does it just holds up. And then when you get to the end of it, you're like, you're ready for A New Hope, which is 40 years ago.
Right.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. I've heard people say the first half of the movie is a little slow. I don't agree with that, but I've heard people say that about Rogue One. If they're going to complain about it, that's what I usually hear.
Sure.
But I don't agree with that. I think it builds the story really nicely so that the third act is so good because you've done that. Yeah. So it's much like we talked about with Andor and how there's so much development building up to it that once you get to the end of that season, you're loving every second of it. Right. And the other thing I thought about is I'm such like a freaking nerd loser. I was watching it, the last half of it, whatever that was, last night, I guess. And, it was like, it's a very emotional film. I mean, even beyond just the certain, spots where it's meant to draw out emotion, people dying, whatever the case may be, and people, having to watch that, but also even just the little stuff, like the scene where Mon goes to Bail and is like, what about your Jedi friend? And he's like, basically says, I'll send Leia to go find him. Oh, like goosebumps. Let's just watching that scene,
because you're getting like almost like years later, we're getting the Kenobi setup, right? Which still, I guess, is the New Hope setup, but you're getting the Kenobi setup. And also like with him walking away and saying, I would trust her with my life. And you're like, that's Leia. Yeah. Like just you're
going to lose that life.
The lines. Yeah. The lines of dialogue. Are so well done, and they're not like some prequels though. They're trying to fill in everything to be like, oh, you see what we did there. Right. Yes. These play with like there's weight to them, and watching it was almost like watching Saving Private Ryan, where like you're watching this war film. So. There's weight to it. There's whatever, and you're like, and you're also like, none of this happened. This isn't real. But it plays so real that like, and maybe it is real to us, we've grown up since the 80s, these kids on these movies. So there is, I guess, an element of realism to them. But no, I was surprised watching it again, like the weight that this movie carries.
We've been in this fight since we were 6 years old.
Literally. You also, I think what's good about this film is you get a really good idea of just how splintered the rebellion still is before this event. Like this is kind of, I think, what galvanizes the rebellion quite a lot. And so I think that it's cool.
It's their first real victory.
Right.
It's their first battle and victory. Yeah. And I think like as a rebellion.
Yeah. And I think the first time the Empire really has to take them seriously, because what we see in Andor is even earlier than that. It's way fragmented. People like operating almost as individuals.
We're seeing different sects so far. Like there's the separatists and there's Saw's group, and like everyone's kind of aware of each other, but they're not one collective.
They're not unified. Yeah, and we see that in the Rebels animated show as well. There's certain cells doing little things that are kind of maybe an annoyance to the Empire, but like Jay was saying, nobody is united, and this is kind of like the first time that you see a unified front against the Imperial forces, and it obviously it makes them stand up and think about the threat of this rebellion. This, as Palpatine says, this pitiful little band.
It's rebels, Well, and it certainly makes Jyn Erso quite the figure in the history of the rebellion, because she's the one who really pushes all this forward when all that happens, and they're all like, "We're not doing this." she's the one who really drives it.
And she transformed because she didn't want to do it to begin with.
Yeah, reluctant. Right. Yeah. Just like Andor was originally.
Like I'll introduce Saw to the rebellion, and this is my part, and I'm done with you.
I'm done with you. Yeah.
And don't you think Cassian sees that in her? He sees it in himself in her because he was the same guy. He was very reluctant to join up.
Yeah.
Well, now, of course.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that's cool. A lot of parallels, obviously, with being the makers of the film and everything and that. But it's great to see this now, having gone back after watching the whole season of Andor. It just makes it all the more meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to briefly touch on the mechanics of the film when it comes to the look, the feel, the texture of the film. I think, one of you guys said that it just really feels like this was shot along at the same time as the 77 film. There is so much detail and TLC that went into making sure that, the costumes were right. I joked around earlier, but the sideburns were right. I mean, the actors look like they were just pulled from the film that was recorded back in the 70s. The Rebel base, the exterior shots of the Masani Temple. I think these are all things that obviously, pool this experience together for me, especially because I'm so into the behind the scenes stuff. And, Matt, you were talking about how, people, and I've heard the same thing, people saying that the beginning part is kind of slow or boring. And I don't see that at all. We get the scenes on Jeddah where the tank comes and the stormtroopers are attacking, and the Saw's guys are attacking, and it's just an exciting battle even before you get to the Battle of Scarif.
And the whole world the whole city is, destroyed. It's a pretty emotional, massive moment.
People are dying. Yeah, there's
a lot of texture there, which I love.
Right.
Even there's this one shot of a statue of a fallen Jedi, which is so George Lucas. It's like he just put it there. You don't explain it. It's just part of this world. It is what it is. We just happen to see it at this point in time. And there you go. It means nothing. But I know that, as fans, we like to pick things apart. And I would love to maybe, have a little backstory on that. But it's amazing to see the set design, the costumes, the scenes. I get excited when I see stormtroopers to begin with. So it's wonderful. It's wonderful for me.
I think one of the things that's been said before, this isn't anything new, but what works for Rogue One in the original films, and I think not so much for the prequels, and they do a little bit more in the sequels, is everything doesn't look brand new, right? Their clothes are a little burnt or shredded or worn, torn, that really adds a little bit of like a real world, like, oh, I recognize this, even though you don't recognize any of it. You've never seen any of this shit before, but it looks real. And that's part of like, watching this today, and really tonight, my son's been going through the Star Trek stuff, the newer Star Trek stuff. So we watched the last Star Trek Beyond. We finished the last like 30 minutes of it tonight, and there's stuff in that's like it's all beautiful and crazy looking, but you see like the person in the CGI, and with Rogue One, it's flawless. Like the battles on the beach and the ship landing and troops coming out, there's dust flying up at them. And it's really hard. And I've seen a shit ton of movies. It's really hard to pick where the elements start and begin from different shots.
Sure.
And we want to talk a lot about, of course, I'm podcasting. So Tony Gilroy, we give Tony Gilroy a lot of credit, but Gareth, I don't think gets enough credit because he was like replaced or added on to, or Gilroy came in and changed things. But most of this movie is his, and Jonathan Noel, the guy that came up with the script, like, man, this movie is just flawless. I watching it, like, I don't, Matt, when this first came out, this is one of the movies you were excited about. And then Andor, the same thing, right? And I was just like, wow, this isn't lightsabers. This isn't, but the more I watch this movie, Andor, I can't, it's Star Wars, man. It's brilliant. This is a fantastic movie.
Well, so yeah, I'm of course on board for the lightsaber stuff and the Jedi stuff, but I really enjoy when they get into just the normal Star Wars world, the place that exists around all the magic. That's what I thought was going to be so cool in Rogue One. When I saw those trailers, I was like, this is so cool. They're taking this one little bit from the crawl and they're going to make this into a story, which you mentioned John Knoll, who came up with that idea. I actually didn't realize that it was his original idea until I was looking back at the extras from on Disney Plus. But, but yes, there's something about having these, like you said, these lived-in spaces that, to me, is what brings out the Star Wars world. It's like going to, well, we talked to Christina recently, and her going on the Galactic Star Cruiser, going to Galaxy's Edge, and seeing just those little details that put you in that place. To me, that's the part that grabs me the most. I still, of course, love the lightsabers. I love the fights and all those battles and all the Jedi stuff. But that's what really grabs onto me the most, because I think it's a little bit more relatable, obviously.
Yeah, and at this point, I really wish you guys would have seen the creator, because it's got a lot of Edwards DNA in it, especially after watching Rogue One. There's a lot of planning that goes into designing certain shots and certain sequences, and I think Gareth Edwards really has kind of a mastery of that. Especially on the creator, since he went out there with his photographer and he shot everything, in camera,
right?
Came back to, it's not easy to decide to do that. It's just a lot easier just to either lock your camera down, put some CGI elements in the shot. But shooting everything on location and then adding all that stuff afterwards takes some planning. And I see a little bit of that in Rogue One, where in the creator, it's like, we mentioned the fact that the two projects had so many years in between them, but I feel like Gareth Edwards was kind of fine tuning his process in order to get the creator done in the way that that maybe, stuff wasn't done or complete in Rogue One.
And also the creator was made on an $80 million budget.
Right. I mean, that's catering.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Like, on some shows,
it had to have been at least 150 million, with another 50 to 80 million dollars in marketing.
Rogue One, you talking about? Rogue One, I think was like over 200. It was like close to 250. It's a very expensive movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can see it
shows on screen, but if you can do this for $80 million, now I haven't seen it yet, and I venture to guess that there's nothing in the creator that ties like the Battle of Scarif. There's a lot of money on that screen, so
sure.
But it's go back to even Godzilla. Like I don't know if he uses the same cinematographer or
I think he has. Yeah.
Those three films, even Monsters, low budget, looks great, but I mean Godzilla and Rogue One and the creator are pretty amazing for this is like a time before like we're really like big budget action movies. They look good, they did a bunch of shit, but you didn't have like that beautiful cinematography.
Yeah,
and that was one of the things. Like even when Godzilla first came out, watching it, like the first half of the movie reminded me of an Amblin film. Like I thought I was watching Spielberg.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to come back and maybe do a quick cuts show when you guys get a chance to see the creator and do a little discussion, a little compare and contrast, because when it comes to directors, everybody's got a style. We understand the tools in the toolbox when it comes to a Steven Spielberg movie or a James Cameron movie. We can understand and kind of differentiate the language of cinema that they are communicating in. And I think Gareth Edwards is one of those directors that, at this point, he's if he's not developing his own style, I think he's got his own style. We definitely see it in Rogue One. We definitely see it in the creator now. I just hope he gets to, continue to do more genre films, more science fiction, more stuff that kind of, goes off the beaten path.
Yeah, for sure.
This is Sentry Mode.
All right, folks, you heard that little jingle. You know what time it is. It's time for Sentry Mode. And for those of you who are not familiar with what Sentry Mode is, it's our quick little Q&A, our trivia, 5 questions I ask a friend to come on board and regale us with their quiz talents. 5 questions, Sentry Mode. Tonight we have Alexander Moylan. What's up, Alex?
The seat's warming up. I feel like I'm on the hot seat already. I'm ready to go.
Excellent. I hope you have fun. We don't take this quiz too seriously, but we definitely like to challenge our friends here on the Scuttlebutt podcast. So are you ready for 5 questions on Sentry Mode?
Let's flex these brain muscles. Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. So the first question is going to, remind folks the last time we were together, we did an episode on the Planet of the Apes, the original Planet of the Apes. And I really enjoyed that episode. I really enjoyed watching or rewatching Planet of the Apes and getting prepared for that. I know you took a little break because you had some life stuff to do, but we got to get back on that Planet of the Apes train and continue our discussion. But here we go. Question number 1. In the original Planet of the Apes, who was the music composer?
That would be Jerry Goldsmith.
That is correct. Can you name another? This is just for extra points. Can you name another movie that he scored?
Yeah, I just watched it about a month ago, but Rambo: First Blood.
There you go. Yeah. Perfect. Jerry Goldsmith obviously is, one of those composers that, we hear his name a lot. A while ago, we did a top 5 science fiction movie soundtracks. So his name popped up as well. He also did Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which my guest at the time, Jessie, she's a big Star Trek fan. So we loved talking about that.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure when that came on screen to see his name. I knew I was in for a good time.
Absolutely. All right, question number 2. We're going to stay with the Planet of the Apes and give you this question. At the end of the original film, Taylor and Nova flee on horseback after that classic ending shot that cinema will never forget. Beyond the Forbidden Zone, according to Dr. Zaius, what will he find there? Was it Cornelius that says, Dr. Zaius, what will he find? And then
that's spot on. Let me try to match with the good Zaius. His destiny.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Indeed, he was on Earth the whole time. He will find his destiny. That was a perfect Dr. Zaius as well. That is awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're going to zip on over to a little trivia in a galaxy far, far away. Question number 3. We all know that Star Wars came out in 1977. George tinkered with his films and released a special edition in what year?
1997.
There you go. Absolutely right. 20 years later, still fiddling with the special effects. That is amazing. What do you think? What did you think of the special editions overall?
They were great for the time. But I think now they're a little more jarring than George may have intended. I still wonder if he'd be tinkering away tonight, this moment, if he still had that, creative control. That would be interesting. Yeah, absolutely. And, you ask a lot of people, and I think they are happy with the way Star Wars came out. I know he, as a director, as a creative, was not happy. But, that happens when somebody gets too emotionally tied or invested to a product, just always tinkering with stuff. Yeah, a lot of fans, myself included, I wish we could have a true definitive theatrical cut of those films on Blu-ray. I know there's a couple fan cuts out there, but I wish we had something official, and I don't think we'll ever have that, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I treasure all of my laser discs and VHSs.
Yeah, you have to.
Excellent. All right. Question number 4. We're going to stay in a galaxy far, far away, but maybe zip out to the outer regions a little bit. What is the Empire removing from the holy city of Jeddah? This is from Rogue One.
The Hearts of Kaiba.
The Hearts of Kaiba. Yes. You're spot on your impressions tonight. I'll give you 100 points just for that.
Oh, beautiful. There we go. Ding, ding, ding.
The Imperials are removing Kyber crystals. I wonder what for. They might be planning on putting those in some sort of device. Who knows?
Yeah, just keep an eye out, folks. Any cloudy days, let's keep an eye out for the weather.
Keep an eye out for the weather, or
any falling stars.
Very large, round shadows. Might give it away. Excellent. All right. This one has nothing to do with Star Wars or apes, but I'll ask you anyway, because I know you are a well-rounded nerd. We've talked about a lot of stuff, and I think you'll get this one. Question number 5. What is the name of the supercomputer in Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Now, I'll take half credit if need be, because I don't know the numerical sequence, but can I just submit HAL?
You can submit HAL.
Is it 900 or 9,000? Oh.
It's one of those two.
It's 9,000?
That is correct.
Ooh, okay.
HAL 9,000.
How about 3/4 credit on that one? I had some assistance.
That's fine. What are you doing, Alexander? Excellent. Yeah, excellent. I knew you wouldn't have trouble with that. Last week, we also had someone that scored a solid 100. I would claim the same for you, a solid 100. You know your stuff.
You're a gracious host. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Excellent. So just hit me up when you want to continue talking about the Planet of the Apes. I got my notes ready. I know we just did the first original film, but I know we wanted to continue through the old classic Planet of the Apes. What was that? The second movie was called what? Beneath?
Yeah, we're going beneath the Planet of the Apes, where things get even crazier.
Excellent. Folks, if you liked our first discussion on the original Planet of the Apes, stay tuned for an imminent announcement. We're going to be continuing our discussion on the Planet of the Apes, and once and for all, we're going to have a lot of fun. Excellent. Alex, why don't you tell folks where people can find you to say hello there?
Yeah, hop on Twitter, everyone, at Alexander Moylan. You'll find me there. Let's talk Star Wars, apes, whatever you like.
Excellent. A little HAL 9000 as well. But Alex, thank you so much for joining me on this segment of the Scarif Scuttlebutt, the Sentry Mode. 5 questions. I bring on friends, and we have some fun. If you have any questions you want to submit, hit me up on the DMs or call our Scarif Scuttlebutt hotline, 773-234-8659. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, everyone.
So I don't know if you want to get into the battle. How do you want to get into the battle? You want to kind of talk a little bit more about the lead up, or just jump into it?
We can definitely jump into it. Let's jump into the Battle of Scarif.
This is Admiral Radish of the Rebel Alliance. All squadron leaders report in.
Admiral, this is Blue Leader standing by.
This is Gold Leader standing by.
This is Red Leader standing by.
I think one of the things you mentioned earlier is the fact that it's the air and land battle you've got going on simultaneously, and also the build up emotionally, like we talked about. So the fact that first they do that. You mentioned the stuff like that happened before Scarif and how it's not boring. They go to Edu and have that whole scene where the rebellion comes in and tries to blow them up. Galen, he's given the order to kill Galen by what's that guy's name? I had to write it down. Draven, that guy, not a great guy. Yeah, very much a results-driven guy.
Yeah, it's interesting because when people say that the first part of Rogue One is boring, I'm like, were you asleep during? Did you not even go into the theater? Because it's anything but boring. It's exciting. There's a certain emotion to it too. I mean, Cassian is fighting his the order to kill Galen, and there's a lot of emotion there. There's a lot of character build up and development and revelation.
Right. And you need that though, because that's some of the things they tied back in when Gilroy came on. I think some of the additions were without introducing Jyn as an older woman that's already with the Rebel Alliance, they did the whole breakout scene, right? So you kind of get to see who she is and what she can do before, we see her getting her mission, right? We see I think one of the additions was Cassian meeting up with his informant and then killing him, so like right away, this is not the Star Wars type that I'm used to. Oh yeah. There was a couple initial, but you need those elements. Like they're not boring. You're right. But like they might be slower. Right. But the fact that you can't have the ending that you have and give a shit about losing these characters if you don't care about them.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's story 101. So they had to give you that. And then going into this third act where you're like, because originally, I think we're going to talk about this later, like we know what was going to happen, whatever, but that was I think all of the characters were to survive. And then spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it yet, but there's no happy ending here.
No.
Other than that, it's a beautiful sunset.
Well, and I think that's why people who aren't maybe or weren't as invested in Rogue One or didn't really pay attention to it as much or whatever. That's why I think they thought you're going to make a whole series out of the Cassian. Like why? Like there's not that much to him. I think when you watch the movie, you see there's a lot there because I mean, obviously we get some more of that background in Andor to give us, more context. But even in the beginning, you see he's this guy who's willing to do whatever for the rebellion, even though he kind of seems like he doesn't feel great about it. But he has his limits, and he also has some heart. Because Jyn pulls that out of him. He goes from being this guy who's just so driven by this is the rebellion. We have to do what's best for that. I'm going to do whatever possible to do that, to all of a sudden opening back up to, it's more than just this. It's not just this particular order I have to follow. I need to be able to make decisions for myself and do what's right, from a human standpoint, not just because if we lose the humanity, then we lose the cause.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. Let's we mentioned the fact that the battle takes place on land and in space. Let's talk a little bit about the events that lead up to it. And I do want to mention that the pacing of both battles is, I think it's spot on. You don't get bored watching one rather than the other. It's there's a lot of stuff happening there. And then, you get that mix when Krennic shows up and starts to realize, what is going on. But there's a line that I think who says it? Bodhi? Yeah, he says. No, Cassian says it. Make 10 men feel like 100.
Yeah. That's just as they're coming into land, and they really don't have a plan, but they know they've got to get these plans, so they're splitting up.
Sorry.
No, but it's wonderful to see that that line almost taken literally, because they do kind of make 10 men feel like 100. They kind of spread out. They put right. I mean, putting those charges in strategically placed areas and causing the ruckus that they did really disoriented the Empire. You see Krennic kind of looking atop the Citadel and realizing that something's going on. But I wanted to mention the pacing of the two battles. I think it's near perfect. What do you guys think?
Well, yeah, like you said, I don't think there's so much going on, but you don't lose track of it. You don't feel lost. The cuts are natural. And I mean, we got a lot of this. It feels a little bit Return of the Jedi-esque in the sense of that was always doing a good job at those swipes and cutting back and forth, to 2 different plots or 3 different plot lines.
Yeah.
So this one, I just felt like they don't go away from one for too long so that you're forgetting about that other part of the battle that's happening. But then they keep you still informed on what you're seeing. I mean, yeah, like you said, the whole like even Bodhi is the one who gets on and starts going, say you're on platform 2 and there's a bunch of troopers. Say you're on platform 6, there's a bunch of troopers.
Right.
It is like making the most out of a small little amount of resources. And you kind of feel that. And it very much feels like a bunch of World War II movies we've seen. Small band, small group, small platoon, or not platoon. I'm getting the groups wrong. Squad, something maybe, where they have to take on a larger enemy and have to be very creative in the way that they do it. And so, and that's also totally goes back to A New Hope and how they had to fight.
But from the filmmaking standpoint and the pacing, like even like Bodhi is like, what do you want me to do? And they're like, well, you stay here because you're our way out of here. Like if we actually survive, we need to get out of here. So instead of having him just sit around, he's listening to the radio, he's kind of taking part. And then he's like, it has to be involved in the mission because at some point, Andor and Jin are locked into the tower. There's no way out for them other than they have to send the signal from the satellite dish, right? So so now he's got to move. So like there's always somebody moving. You've got who is it? Chirrut
and Baze.
And Baze. And they're every time I've seen this movie, those 2 characters grow on me more and more.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
More than the other ones. Like I really enjoy their characters and their brotherhood, and just like watching them like
work together.
Know that they're going to die, and then one witnesses the other one, and still like and every character has like a purpose. Like they die with the cause, right? It wouldn't have gone forward without one of them continuing until they died. Like it's brilliantly executed.
The stakes are real. Of everyone in that group. I mean, you mentioned it. Cassian and Jin are trapped on the Citadel. The beachfront. They're slowly being decimated. The space battle. I mean, again, the stakes are real, and it's palpable.
Right, and they went there to die. Like they were trying to get, and Mon Mothma again is like, she lets everyone kind of vote or whatever, and she doesn't oversee anything. So she's like, well, they're saying no, and they're like, well, we're going to go anyways. This ragtag group, they kind of get together and they go to Scarif thinking, first of all, they don't know how they're going to get through the force field and get in there, and if they do, they think they're alone. And then over the radio, they hear because they've actually infiltrated and shit's going down. Like the Rebel Alliance has decided we're going in. So then, as you've got this small group of people you give a shit about, all of a sudden now all these ships are showing up, so then you're getting this space battle that, you always have to have in Star Wars. And it's just, man, is it played? And who's the guy that's like the, I forget his name. He's not the Admiral Akbar, but he's the his name?
Radis.
Yeah, Radis. He's pretty badass too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great that they brought him in, and it's great. There's a little animation connection between him and his character and his ships, and it's fantastic. One thing that I did want to mention, because obviously it seems like we are fans of the Andor series. And I think going into the Andor series, I was really excited not only to see the characters that we know from Rogue One when it comes to Cassian Andor and his, prequel story, but the character of Saw Gerrera in Rogue One. And really from his inception, from the animated shows in the Clone Wars and Rebels. I mean, the way that Saw Gerrera and kudos to the actor
Forrest Whitaker.
Forrest Whitaker is a force to be reckoned with, and I say that with great power there. and they wrote the character of Saw Gerrera and Mon Mothma so perfectly well in the animated shows, and that is one of the things that actually I was looking forward to in Andor. I wanted to see more of that that little infighting between the two characters. They were tongue in cheek with each other, passive aggressive at some point.
In Rebels, there's a huge confrontational scene between the two where she's on Hollow, I think, and he's in person. Yeah. But I'm excited to see more of them. I want to
see more of them in season 2 of Andor.
Yeah, I'm glad. I don't want them to.
I want to see more of Mon Mothma.
Well, we know you want to see more of Mon Mothma.
I want her to have her own show.
But I just mean, I think that it's good that they don't abuse and use Saw too much. But I think we're going to have to see more of him in season 2. And another person I'm excited to see in season 2, if you want to call it a person, is K2SO. Because one thing that I've talked about on our show a lot is that Star Wars is so good at making likable droids. They do it all the time. They do it so well. They did it again in Ahsoka with Hu Yang. And so I think that death scene was like, it hurt. Like when he was going down for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an emotional moment because you realize that Cassian has this long-standing relationship with him, and as snarky and as goofy as he is at times, he was a critical part.
Right, and like that's an origin we don't know of yet, right? Because he's an Imperial droid. Yeah. So we've seen them in Andor, like just like choking the guy up against the wall on the beach on whatever planet that was. Yep. It wasn't Navarro, it was whatever.
Oh God, good question.
I know, but to see how ruthless they can be, like where does this K2SO get his personality? Even though it's dry as hell, he's always given like statistical analysis that you don't want to hear because it's never going to work in your favor, even though,
which is a nod to 3PO too.
Right, yeah, but fuck 3PO.
Well,
like,
I know, but I'm just saying, it's a familiar nod.
So like I'm very we were hoping to see a little bit of him, at least his introduction in the end of season 1 of Andor, and we haven't yet. So, but we know going to season 2, like there's gonna be an introduction. They have to become chummy. Yeah. Like what is it that makes the two of them or him trust that droid? Because you don't know if he's gonna glitch and shit's gonna go wrong. But and Alan Tudyk, like just add something. So he's supposed to come back, right? He's supposed to come back.
I believe he said he's coming for season 2.
Not just voice. Okay, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, Niamos is the name of the
Niamos.
planet.
You got it. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah, and I mean, we talked about the cinematography stuff too. There's a lot of really cool shots in these battle scenes. Like the shots of the AT-AT coming through from behind them was really cool. And before, guy who likes to listen to our show, Max Rebo, complains. I know they're probably called something else, but they look like AT-ATs. Right. I didn't have time to look up the model number.
They're the smaller versions of the AT-AT.
Yeah.
Right. But that stuff and watching, it's always cool to see X-Wings and TIE fighters and stuff flying like kind of like in atmosphere.
Right.
I always enjoy that. So it was cool to see that. Then you also get the fact that like you get these little fun nods. The Ghost shows up to the battle above. Sure. There's just there's so many things happening there from a cinematography standpoint that are so rewarding.
I'm correct me if I'm wrong. We'll probably delve into this a little bit later, but like the fight above was it Red Squadron? Was some of the footage was pulled from the original outtakes of A New Hope, right?
Yes, absolutely. Red and gold.
Yeah,
red and gold,
absolutely. And we'll definitely talk about that later, but I want to take a quick pause right now and really do a quick little recap before we continue on our discussion. And we're going to continue that discussion on your show from a certain point askew. So, guys, Rogue One is just such an amazing film. Matt, you mentioned that you don't like ranking Star Wars, but I do, and I rank this one in my top 3. Empire is number 1. Rogue One, I think, is number 2. And then 3 is a mishmash of whatever I'm feeling at the time. But absolutely, Rogue One is up there for me. It's a wonderful film. It takes me back really to watching A New Hope. For many reasons. And obviously, Jay, you talked about how it feels like they pulled the film from back in the 70s, which we'll definitely talk about. But guys, big thanks for having you guys do this first part of the discussion here on the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. Why don't you tell folks where people can find you and where to go after they listen to us?
Yeah.
That's right. So we have a website from certainpointaskew.com. You can also find us on Twitter at FACPA Pod. And so please reach out to us that way. We are very interactive on Twitter, and we love to hear feedback. That's one of the greatest things we get about this show is that we get a lot of people answering our question of the week, a lot of people sending in emails, and that's one of our favorite things about it is having these discussions, having people send in funny ideas for us to kind of noodle on. So I think, like I said, this will be episode 127 where we pick this conversation up. So just definitely go out, look for us. We're on all the usual podcast or podcatchers.
From a certain point askew.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. And let's continue the conversation. We're going to get into some nitty gritty. I love talking behind the scenes, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this episode of the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast. We're talking about the Battle of Scarif and a little Rogue One action. But like I said, join the conversation from a certain point askew. Go find them, and let's continue the talk. Until next time, this is Ro from the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast, and that's the Scuttlebutt.
Greetings, listener. Just a reminder that the podcast you just heard is a proud member of the Red 5 Network family. Red5network.com offers you a great variety of shows you'll be sure to love. So the next time you're itching for quality content, make sure you head over to Red5network.com. You'll find this podcast along with a whole lot more. All wings report in. It's the Red 5 Network.